I am a 33-year-old female living in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. I work as a graphic designer. My husband, who I will refer to as Dave, is the same age as me. This happened in 2018, when we were 27. This was the year that my husband and I rented a 3-bedroom house together. This was also the year that I started my graphic design career and got my first job. Most of my coworkers were nice and helpful. However, there was a guy named Max who became the reason that I'm submitting this story. From the moment I first met him, he gave me the creeps, and I never cared to interact with him. I admit that I'm very socially selective. I can like some people while not giving a damn about others, but still I couldn't just ignore the uncomfortable feeling I had around him. It all started when we had to do a major project. Our demanding boss didn't give us a choice when it came to who we had as partners. So of course, I was stuck with Max. At first, I was somewhat okay with this. He was very good at his job, but his inner creep began to reveal itself as time went on. He would ask me about where I lived, where I grew up, what my nationality was, what kind of car I drove, and where I used to study. I always tried to change the subject and focus on the work at hand. I even asked my boss if I could be partnered with somebody else, but the grumpy old man told me to suck it up, and his goal was for everyone to get along because he doesn't tolerate social discrimination. Whatever the hell that means. Max tried hard to be the nice guy. He would try inviting me to his place. He would buy me lunch when I never asked for it. And he would say things over text message like, "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. It was good seeing you today. You are very pleasant to work with." Ugh, cringe. I try not to think too much into it, but over time he began to get on my nerves. One day, my car broke down. The clutch needed to be replaced. So on that day, my husband had to pick me up. When he showed up, I got into his truck and greeted him. When that happened, I noticed that Max, who was also outside, had a very angry look on his face. It was the kind of look that a toddler makes when you take away their toys. But seeing it on a grown man was unsettling. Dave joked around and said, "Well, it looks like you broke your work husband's heart." I tried to lighten up the mood and responded with, "Oh, I feel so bad. I'm such a terrible work wife." But deep down, I knew that I still had to work with this obsessed weirdo on the final part of the project, and I dreaded going back to work the next day. When my husband dropped me off the following morning, I got out of my truck and noticed that Max was glaring at my husband. I will admit that Dave did antagonize him a bit, but Max was staring at him like Ted Bundy at a sorority house. My husband laughed at him and drove away. Later on, Max quietly told me in a low, angry voice, "You know I've been trying to be nice to you, but you've been nothing but rude to me, and your fucking husband better watch his back. Well, I didn't even want to work with you to begin with, so go fuck yourself." I decided to quit my job on the spot after getting scolded by my boss. I couldn't take being teamed up with a mentally unstable creep and having to listen to some old, out-of-touch boss condescend to me about getting along with others. No, some people you just can't get along with. Just ask anyone who's been through a divorce. However, things wouldn't end there. A couple of nights later, I was on my phone, trying to look for another job, when I received a message. It was from an unknown number. I opened up my phone, and to my absolute horror, it was a picture of my house, along with a text that read, "I know you're here." Another message came in right after. "You are going to leave your husband and be with me, or I'm going to make your life a living hell, you ungrateful bitch." I was absolutely terrified. I then looked out of my window and saw a figure standing across the street. I couldn't see his face, but I knew it was Max. He made his way across the yard to one of the front windows and tried breaking the glass with a brick, but thankfully, he was unsuccessful. Our windows are super strong. Then out of nowhere, 2 police cars showed up in the driveway. It turns out that one of our neighbors had seen him before I did and called it in. Max was arrested on the spot. They had discovered his car outside the neighborhood. When they searched it, they found duct tape, a hunting knife, and various drugs, the kidnapper's starter pack. My husband quickly came home as soon as he found out what was going on. I knew that Max was always weird, but I didn't know he was absolutely nuts. I'll forever be grateful to our neighbors for calling the cops when they did. I was about to call them myself after I saw him standing outside my home, but who knows if they would have gotten there in time. My name is Jerry. I'm 28 years old now, but this happened back in 2013. I lived on the outskirts of Boston, and I was 17 at the time. I had recently acquired my driver's license and my first car, an early 2000s Hyundai. In the middle of January, my brother and I decided to go on a road trip. I'll refer to him as Carl. We would go visit our cousin out of town over the weekend, which was about a 2 hours drive away. The trip went well, and we had a great time with our cousin. But soon, it was time to head back. At around 11 p.m., I noticed that my tank was running empty. I should have planned this out better, because I didn't look forward to stopping for gas at this hour, but we had no choice. We eventually came to a poorly lit gas station off of a back road. Carl became very uneasy. This looks like the setting to a horror film. Are you sure you want to stop here? Dude, don't be such a baby. We're almost on empty. You can just wait in the car while I fill her up. While I was pumping gas, a black BMW pulled in next to us. A man who was about 6 feet tall, with long dark hair, stepped out and walked up to me. Hey man, do you have any rock on you? What do you mean by that? Crack, man. Do you have any crack on you? Well, everybody has a crack, but I don't have what you're looking for. This guy really gave me the creeps. After I told him again that I didn't have any, he stared at me with a blank expression, not saying a word. As I finished up at the pump, he suddenly grabbed me by the neck and pinned me against my car. You think you could come into my house and sling? Huh? I don't know what the hell you're talking about, man. Get off me. During the commotion, my brother got out of the car and struck the man in the back of his head as he was reaching into his belt. He face-planted on the hard concrete. Jerry, get in the passenger seat. I'm driving. I quickly got in. Carl put the car into drive and floored it out of there. However, it wasn't over yet. My brother had the pedal to the floor, but soon, a pair of headlights were bearing down on us. The maniac had gotten back into his SUV and was now chasing us down. Our busted-up Hyundai couldn't outrun the high-powered BMW. He managed to get in front of us and block us from going any further. My brother slammed on the brakes and then put the car into reverse. However, the man got out of his vehicle and began charging at us with a knife, which was a very dumb decision on his part, because Carl put our car back into drive and sideswiped the guy, taking out the BMW's open door in the process. The guy was thrown across the road, and we got the hell out of there. We drove to a police station to report the incident, and luckily, my brother remembered the license plate. The police later informed us that the BMW was stolen. As far as I know, the man was never caught, and my brother and I never told our parents. We didn't want this to be the reason that we had to stop visiting our cousin. Carl was the one that filed the report, and he was an adult, so any follow-ups were made with him. Looking back over a decade later, I'm grateful that my brother saved my life that night. That entire situation was just nuts from start to finish, but it also made us even closer than before. This story will resonate with anyone who likes traveling to foreign countries, and will be especially disturbing to any parents listening to this. For some context, this happened in August of last year, and the location is Paris, France. My wife chose a hotel which was about a 45-minute train ride from Paris. What we weren't aware of was the worker strikes disrupting the service. So traveling often involved changing between buses and trains. As with any major city, the outskirts can be less desirable. Paris is no different in this regard. There were a number of incidents that set the tone for the day, some of which I was informed about after the fact. So there is me, my wife, and our 15-year-old daughter. My daughter is the main focus of this story. She's a very pretty girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. She would not, or should I say, shouldn't be mistaken for looking older than her age. The aforementioned incidents I was informed about was that a 40-plus aged guy followed us onto the train and winked at her. At the Eiffel Tower, some stereotypical pedo-looking man was caught by my daughter blowing her a kiss. I would have ended up in jail had I witnessed these events for myself. Anyhow, on to the main part of the story. We stayed at the Eiffel Tower until late to see it light up at night. Once the ladies were satisfied, we decided to head back to the hotel. Keep in mind, we were using Google Maps to navigate. However, my wife's phone was dead from all her photography antics, and I had forgotten mine at the hotel, and my daughter's was down to 20%. The bright side was that the final leg of the journey involved a 25-minute bus ride. We had a similar experience the night before, and being the only Caucasian people on the bus was not a new situation, but the vibe was completely different this time around. For one, it was late, around 11 p.m., and the bus passengers were all men. As we walked onto the bus, some big guy sitting up front muttered something in French as we walked past. So that instantly put me on edge. We sat toward the back of the bus, me next to my daughter and my wife on the seat parallel to us. Nothing else seemed out of the ordinary at first, until my daughter became visibly distressed. I asked her many times what was wrong, only for her to tell me, "I'll tell you when we get off the bus." I'm now on high alert, looking around at people in front. There was a passenger who kind of looked like Snoop Dogg. He sat a few rows in front of us, facing us. He looked a bit shifty. I exchanged glances with him several times while trying to see if he was doing anything to upset my daughter. It wasn't long before my daughter broke out into an uncontrolled sob, still telling me that she would tell me once we got off the bus. At this point, Snoop Dogg moved to the middle of the bus. In my mind, he was definitely the culprit. He then started chatting with the big guy from earlier. I knew that we were in trouble. I fancied my chances against Snoop Dogg, but the big guy would be difficult to fight off. All I was thinking about was getting my wife and daughter to safety. The bus gets to our stop. Expecting Snoop and the big guy to be right behind us, I told my wife to hand me the bottle opener we had gotten at the Eiffel Tower. It had a corkscrew and a very small knife attachment. Better than nothing. Luckily for us, there were still some staff at the bus station as we exited, so we made a beeline for them, which was when I got the full story out of my daughter, who was still sobbing. In a horror movie plot twist, I was told that neither Snoop Dogg or the other guy were responsible. The culprit was sitting behind her. I got a cold shiver down my spine as my daughter proceeded to tell me that the man sitting behind her had been touching her neck and hair the entire time and whispering inappropriate things to her. I was in complete disbelief and shock. Yes, there was a lot of people on the bus and it had been noisy, but neither I nor my wife noticed this guy touching our daughter. We explained the situation to the employees, who arranged an Uber for us since our phones were dead. We originally planned to do a 15-minute walk we had done the night before, but that idea was scrapped immediately. We weren't out of the woods just yet, though. As we waited for the Uber, a car approached the roundabout in front of us and slowly drove around a few times before speeding off, only for it to come back a few minutes later and do the same exact thing. I couldn't make out its occupants other than the car was full, and it certainly wasn't our Uber driver. It was definitely very suspicious. Being on holiday can give you a false sense of security and that you are naturally more relaxed. But the reality is that you stand out and can easily become a target, especially in Paris. Hey everyone, this is your Uncle Unit. Thank you so much for checking out my video. If you have a story that you would like me to narrate on this channel, please send it to my email, unit522submit@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you would like to support this channel even further, you can check out my merch store. There's a link for that in the description. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you stay tuned for the next video. Until then, never forget. There's always a reason to be afraid.